Good morning, good afternoon, good night. This video is about, well, first let me introduce myself. I'm Myrna Loy, for those of you who are new to this channel. I work with Blackbright News, and this is a Black-centered publication which can be found at www.issuu.com/Blackbright News. Now, I discuss different topics. I don't claim to be an authority on any of these topics. What I do is I listen to the news, I listen to third-party opinions, and I give my own thoughts and my own opinions, and I do some research, and I let you know what I think. So, with that background, I am going to discuss whether or not the police are qualified to enforce the law. Now, why do I ask this question? Well, I ask this question, first of all, because of the disparity of blacks being in stop and search, but most of all, because I think, once again, not everyone is an intentional racist or shows intentional bias. Now, when you think about the policeman as an individual, he's a father, he's a brother, he's a friend. I mean, people who are close to him, he's just a lovely guy. But sometimes when the police enter the police force, you have to remember that the police are just individuals who have been recruited to enforce the law. What are their qualifications? Have they been trained on cultural diversity? Do they have any idea? What are their thoughts on racism? Are they going into the police force because of the benefits? Or are they going into the police force because they want to serve and protect, observe and report? Or do they want to go into the police force because it gives them a power and they're in a position to abuse that power? We can't take it for granted that every police officer that applies to be every person that applies to be a police officer has a good intention. The majority, or I don't know whether the majority or the minority do. We'd like to think they do, but sometimes because of their socialization, because of their upbringing, I mean, we don't even know what their upbringing is. We don't know how that is checked. How do we know that police officers have not been victims of trauma? How do we know that they're not out for revenge? How do we know that, they haven't got some kind of vendetta going on? How do we know that they're qualified to enforce the law? That's what I'm really getting at. We don't. Nobody does. The police force, because there's such a shortage of policemen, sometimes the police just employ anybody. They're just glad to put somebody in a uniform and get them out there. So you've got some people who might not be emotionally or mentally stable in a uniform with a gun. And we don't know what their motives are. So we have to bear in mind, I mean, even the general John Joe, the general public, when we go for a job, a lot of the times it's not because we want a job or we love the job. A lot of times it's just for the money. And so we can pay our bills. And the same with police officers. They don't necessarily have to want to serve and protect. Sometimes it is to pay their bills. And if they have an argument, or if they're upset at home, or if they have a grievance with somebody, who knows the poor bastard that they confront and decide to take it out on? We don't know that. We don't know what motivates them. So how do we know whether or not a police officer is qualified to enforce the law? They do have a code of ethics, and that is transparency, that is fairness, that is, what else was it? Professionalism, and to be legal. Now, with regard to fairness, are they fair? Are they fair when they stereotype? And remember, a lot of police officers, because they're unaware of their implicit biases, because sometimes not everybody knows that they're racist, you know. People seem to have this label and think, oh my God, that person's a racist because he said A, B, C, D, and E, or because he doesn't like black people. But that's not how it works. Sometimes racism is dormant. Sometimes it's just by virtue of what you've read at school, how you've been conditioned in the church if you went to church, how you've been conditioned in the home, what you've been exposed to in the media, what you've read in magazines and books. Sometimes that's your form of reference. And sometimes that is what informs you about other races and other cultures. And if you have not spent years and years studying, which a lot of people haven't, you haven't got a clue about race or racism. And you wouldn't even be aware that you have racist tendencies or bias. You know, you're bias illiterate. You see what I mean? You're not going to know that. So you're going to go about your merry way, apply for a job, believe that you're okay, I'm fine because I've got a black neighbour, you know, my mate is black, and you're not going to be aware of things that are inside you that are dormant, that come out and show that, you know, that there are racist tendencies in you. And it could be the way, you know, if a black person talks to you a certain way, how dare he? Who the hell does he think he is? He's a bit cocky. I mean, some people probably think, what the hell are you doing on YouTube with your black face? What are you doing here? You know, people have those kind of thoughts and programming, and that some of them, they don't even realise where it's coming from. It's deep-rooted. And that's what happens. So a police officer, he might think, oh yeah, I'm fine. You know, I like black people. But God forbid, you've got a cocky black bloke who's big and, you know, who's got an attitude and who knows his rights and who knows the law and knows how to defend himself. Good God forbid. If you've had a bad day, you'll be calling him the N-word, you'll be calling him everything. Regardless of how your friend is regardless of how your friend is a black person. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, people just need to be aware that inside them, providing they are white, there is something inside them that makes them believe that they're superior to black people. And it comes over in a lot of different ways that they don't even realise. Half of the time. And I'm not talking about overt racists. I'm not talking about those. So don't slam me down and say, oh yeah, we got racists. But I'm not talking about those card-holding racists and the, you know, like the Ku Klux Klan and people like that. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the regular person who really doesn't know that they are racist until they're put in a position where it comes up. And then they're like, oh, you know, that's who I'm referring to. So what else is there? Yeah, I don't know really. I was just trying to think, okay, if bias is unintentional, how can you correct it? How can you make it right? You know, sometimes even the habits, you know, normal habits that we have, like eating and you want to go on a diet, you know how hard that is when you love your food? How to break that habit? You have to be intentional. You have to decide, yeah, I'm going to eat this, this and this so I can lose weight. People who smoke, you know how hard it is to break that habit of smoking. People who bite their nails. You know, habits are really hard to break, and those are habits that will do you benefit. It's got nothing to do with anybody else, let alone racism. How do you break the habit of racism? How do you become intentionally fair to every person, regardless of their colour, regardless of their gender, regardless of anything. I mean, you would have to be intentional and break that habit. And if you find it hard to break the habit of smoking and drinking and all these other things that are actually personal to you, how are you going to, it's going to be so much harder to be intentional about being fair and not looking at a black person as some kind of something out of space and something harmful just because you've been miseducated. You see, my videos, they are just about raising awareness, to just give a different viewpoint, to not just take things for granted. That's what these videos are about. They're not about attacking anyone. People attack me, I don't even know why they attack me. I don't even think they look at the video. I think they just see my face and think, who the bloody hell is she? And they say they slag me off big time. Some of them are hostile, some of them are not. But hey, I've got used to it now. When I first did these videos, I found it a bit disturbing. But now I don't give a toss, because I know my main purpose is to enlighten and to show, you know, just to have a different point of view about things that happen and affect us every single day. And as a black person, I don't like it when I'm walking behind a white person and she clutches her bag, or she shuffles, or she's a bit wary. I'm not saying they all do. Of course, I work with white people. I see white people on the street. Some of them are high, some of them are nice. You know, I say good morning. It's fine. But there are people who still are fearful just by being in the presence of a black person. And those people probably ain't even watching YouTube. But it's just about each one teaching one and getting the message across that, you know, we can, if we take the time to learn, be intentional in our behaviour and in our attitude. And, you know, I'm sure things can be a bit better than how they are now. And for the police especially, that's who this is really addressing, because our boys and our sons, I mean, a friend of mine called me today and said, you know, his son has been taken in by the police. And, you know, you get scared. You know, all we can do is pray that he's in the hands of a fair police officer, that person is not going to be one of the bad ones who's had a bad day. That's all we can do, because there's good and bad in everyone. But that's all I've got to say. Bye for now.